The mining facility on Kepler 442b hummed with the constant vibration of heavy machinery, but today, something felt different. Marcus Chen, the human foreman overseeing the tritium extraction operation, noticed his alien crew members acting strangely. The Zephyrians kept their stalked eyes low, and the insectoid Klavik workers clicked their mandibles nervously whenever they thought he wasn't looking. "What's got everyone spooked?" Marcus asked his deputy, a hulking Gorvani named Thek, whose blue-scaled hide bore the scars of decades in the mining trade. Thek's massive shoulders shifted uncomfortably. "There are stories, Foreman Chen. Workers speak of something in the old caverns. Something that should not be there." Marcus had been running this operation for 3 standard years, ever since the Galactic Mining Consortium had decided they needed a human to manage the increasingly diverse workforce. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy for being adaptable, stubborn, and surprisingly good at getting different species to work together. What they didn't have a reputation for was backing down from mysteries. The tritium mine stretched deep into the planet's crust, following veins of the precious fuel through a maze of natural and artificial tunnels. The newer sections were well lit and properly ventilated, but the older caverns that had been abandoned when richer deposits were found elsewhere remained dark and largely unexplored. That afternoon, when the third shift reported strange sounds echoing from Tunnel 7, Marcus decided he'd heard enough second-hand stories. He grabbed his portable lighting unit, his emergency beacon, and his sidearm. The weapon was more for the occasional tunnel predator than any real threat, but company regulations were company regulations. The abandoned section felt different from the working areas. The air was thicker, heavy with the smell of minerals and something else Marcus couldn't quite identify. His boots echoed against the rough stone as he made his way deeper, following the tunnel as it curved and branched into smaller passages. The sound hit him first. A low, rhythmic whimpering that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't the mechanical noise of settling rock or faulty equipment. This was organic, pained, and utterly alien. Marcus followed the sound through 3 more branching passages before his light finally revealed its source. In a natural cavern about the size of his office, something white gleamed against the dark stone. As he moved closer, his breath caught in his throat. It was clearly alive, though unlike anything in the galactic species database. The creature was roughly the size of a small shuttle, with a serpentine body covered in scales that seemed to shift between pure white and pale silver, depending on how his light hit them. 4 legs, each ending in what looked like a cross between claws and hands, were folded beneath a torso that rose into a long, elegant neck. At the end of that neck was a head that could only be described as draconic, complete with horn-like protrusions and eyes that reflected his light like mirrors. One of those eyes tracked his movement as he approached. The creature was conscious, aware, and very clearly in pain. The source of its distress became obvious as Marcus circled around to get a better view. The left rear leg was bent at an impossible angle, the white scales around the break dark with what could only be blood. From the way the creature held itself, the leg had been broken for some time. But that wasn't what made Marcus's heart race. What made his pulse quicken was the realization of what he was looking at. The proportions, the intelligence in those eyes, the way the creature's head was shaped. This wasn't just some undiscovered animal. This was clearly a sentient being. "Easy there," Marcus said softly, holding his hands where the creature could see them. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature's head tilted slightly, and Marcus could have sworn he saw something like curiosity flicker across those alien features. When it tried to shift position, a sound escaped that was part whimper, part something that might have been an attempt at communication. Marcus activated his emergency beacon, but instead of calling for a rescue team, he sent a message back to the main facility requesting medical supplies and his personal toolkit. If his crew saw this creature, word would spread throughout the galaxy within days. Depending on what corporate or governmental interests got involved, this being might end up as a specimen in a laboratory somewhere. The creature watched him with what seemed like growing trust as Marcus settled down a safe distance away to wait for his supplies. Every few minutes it would make soft sounds that Marcus began to recognize as attempts at communication. The tones were complex, musical, and definitely structured like language. "I don't know what you're saying," Marcus admitted, "but I'm going to help you if I can." When his supplies arrived via the facility's drone delivery system, Marcus approached slowly with a medical scanner in one hand and a universal translator in the other. The creature tensed but didn't try to move away as the scanner hummed over its injured leg. The results made Marcus whistle low. Compound fracture, infection setting in. But the bone structure was remarkably similar to terrestrial lizards he'd studied in xenobiology class. The universal translator was picking up the creature's vocalizations, but it kept displaying error messages. Whatever language this being spoke, it wasn't in any known database. Marcus spent the next several hours working by the light of his portable units, cleaning the wound as gently as possible, and applying a bone regeneration gel that worked on most carbon-based life forms. The creature endured the treatment with remarkable patience, occasionally making sounds that the translator interpreted as either gratitude or encouragement. As the medical gel began to work, and the swelling in the creature's leg started to reduce, Marcus found himself talking to keep both of them calm. He explained what he was doing, talked about the mining operation, even shared stories about Earth and his family back home. The creature listened intently to everything, those mirror-bright eyes never leaving Marcus's face. When he finished with the medical treatment and began setting up a more permanent lighting system, so the creature wouldn't be left in darkness, something remarkable happened. The creature spoke, and this time the translator caught enough to display a partial message. Gratitude, trust, name. Marcus looked up from his work to find the creature watching him with an expression that somehow managed to convey both dignity and vulnerability. Are you trying to tell me your name? The creature repeated the sounds more slowly, and the translator displayed, Zarelith, my designation, gratitude, healer. Marcus smiled as he realized he'd just made first contact with an entirely new species. Nice to meet you, Zarelith. I'm Marcus. 3 days passed before Marcus felt comfortable leaving Zarelith alone for more than a few hours. The dragon's leg was healing remarkably well thanks to the bone regeneration gel. But Marcus had quickly realized that physical healing was only part of the challenge. Zarelith was clearly suffering from more than just a broken bone. The translator had improved significantly as it analyzed more of Zarelith's speech patterns, and what Marcus learned painted a grim picture. Zarelith belonged to a species called the Virakith, ancient beings who had once traveled between stars before most of the current galactic civilizations had discovered fire. But Zarelith wasn't just any Virakith. The pale coloring that Marcus had initially found beautiful was actually a genetic variation that made Zarelith an outcast among their own kind. Albino means weakness. In the old tongue, Zarelith explained during one of their conversations, the translator now managing to convey most of the meaning. My clutch siblings. They left me here when the leg was broken, said the void between would claim me as it should have when I hatched. Marcus felt his jaw clench as he processed this. The Virakith had essentially left Zarelith to die because of a genetic condition and an injury. That's not weakness, he said firmly. That's just genetics. And abandoning someone who's hurt? That's not strength. That's cowardice. Zarelith's head tilted in a gesture Marcus had learned indicated confusion or surprise. You speak strangely for one so small. Your species, humans. You care for the weak? We care for each other, Marcus corrected. Strong, weak, different, doesn't matter. That's what makes us strong as a species. This concept seemed to fascinate Zarelith. Over the following days, as Marcus continued to visit during his off shifts bringing food and supplies, Zarelith peppered him with questions about human society. How did humans treat their young? What happened to humans who were born different? How did humans decide who led and who followed? Marcus found himself explaining concepts that he'd always taken for granted. How human children were protected and nurtured regardless of their physical or mental capabilities. How human societies had evolved to value diversity and different perspectives. How human leaders were chosen based on their ability to serve their communities rather than simply their physical dominance. Your species sounds chaotic, Zarelith observed after one particularly long explanation about democratic processes. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but it works. We've gone from living in caves to traveling between stars in just a few thousand years, and we did it by working together, not by abandoning the weak. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps in the tunnel. Marcus quickly doused his portable lights and motioned for Zarelith to remain silent. 3 Klavek workers appeared at the cavern entrance, their compound eyes glittering in the dim light of their helmet lamps. Foreman Chen? One of them clicked in the trade language. "Your scent trail leads here." The crew grows concerned. Marcus stepped into view, blocking their line of sight to Zarelith. "Just checking some unusual seismic readings in this section. Old mining operations sometimes leave unstable pockets." The Clavic workers' antennae twitched, clearly picking up scents they couldn't identify, but they didn't press the issue. Humans had a reputation for being thorough in their work, and Foreman Chen had earned their respect over the years. After exchanging a few more pleasantries about the mining schedules, they departed. When their footsteps had faded, Marcus turned back to find Zarelith watching him with an unreadable expression. "You concealed my presence. Why?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Because once word gets out that you're here, everything changes. Corporate will want to study you. The Galactic Council will want to establish diplomatic contact. Scientists will want to catalog your species, and none of them will ask what you want. And what do you believe I want? Right now? Time to heal. Time to decide what comes next on your own terms." Zarelith was quiet for a long moment. When the dragon spoke again, there was something different in the tone. "The Viraketh have legends about other species. We called them the Flame Carriers, beings who burned with an inner fire that let them accomplish impossible things. Most of my people believed they were myth, and now I think perhaps the legends were about humans." Marcus felt a strange warmth at the compliment, but he also sensed something deeper in Zarelith's words. "What aren't you telling me about your people?" Zarelith's massive form shifted uncomfortably. "The Viraketh are old, ancient beyond your understanding. We were exploring the galaxy when your species was still discovering agriculture, but age has made us rigid, set in our ways. We follow the old codes, the old traditions without question. And those traditions say that albinos should be abandoned. Those traditions say that the weak dilute the strength of the clutch. That survival of the fittest is the only law that matters. That—" Zarelith paused, searching for words. "That mercy is a luxury that leads to extinction." Marcus sat down on a convenient rock, his mind racing. "But you don't believe that." "I did not wish to. But I had no alternative example until now." Zarelith's great head turned to study Marcus intently. "You show mercy to one who is not even your species. You risk discovery to help someone who can offer you nothing in return. By Viraketh standards, this should make you weak. And what do you think?" "I think," Zarelith said slowly, "that perhaps the Viraketh standards are flawed." The conversation was interrupted by Marcus's communication device beeping with an urgent message. He read it quickly, then looked up to find Zarelith watching him with concern. "Problems at the facility?" the dragon asked. "Corporate inspection coming tomorrow. Unannounced. They'll want to see everything, including the abandoned sections." Marcus stood up, his mind already working through the logistics. "I need to move you somewhere safer." Where would a creature of my size hide on a planet that consists mainly of mining operations? Marcus grinned. "Leave that to me. Humans are pretty good at improvisation." That night, Marcus worked with a determination that surprised even him. Using the facility's heavy equipment during the night shift, he opened up a new section of tunnels that officially didn't exist in any mining survey. By morning, Zarelith had a new hiding place complete with ventilation, lighting, and enough space to move around comfortably. As they settled into the new location, Zarelith made a sound that Marcus had learned was the Viraketh equivalent of laughter. "You have built me a lair worthy of legend." The irony is not lost on me. What irony? For thousands of years, Viraketh have been the monsters in other species' stories. The creatures to be feared and avoided, and here I am, being protected by the very type of being my people would consider prey. Marcus looked at the magnificent creature before him, intelligent, dignified, and grateful for simple kindness. Maybe it's time for some new stories. The corporate inspection went smoothly, with Marcus successfully steering the team of suited executives away from the abandoned sections and focusing their attention on the impressive production numbers his crew had been achieving. What he hadn't anticipated was that the inspection team would be followed by something far more dangerous than corporate oversight. 2 days after the executives departed, Marcus's communication array picked up an incoming transmission on frequencies that made his blood run cold. The signal bore the distinctive modulation patterns of a Viraketh warship. Marcus rushed to Zarelith's hidden chamber, his heart pounding. The dragon was resting comfortably, the injured leg now strong enough to bear weight but still not fully healed. When Marcus burst into the chamber, Zarelith immediately sensed his distress. Something troubles you, friend Marcus? Your people are coming. I'm picking up Viraketh communications. They'll be here within hours. Zarelith's entire demeanor changed instantly. The relaxed, almost peaceful bearing that had developed over their weeks together vanished, replaced by something primal and afraid. They cannot find me here. They cannot know of your involvement. What exactly will happen if they find you? For me? Death, most likely. The clutch law demands that the weak who refuse to die naturally must be eliminated to prevent contamination of the gene pool. Zarelith's voice carried a terrible certainty. For you, unknown, humans are considered a curiosity by most Viraketh. Some find your species amusing. Others consider you a threat to the natural order. Marcus felt his stubborn streak kicking in. Well, they're not taking you anywhere you don't want to go. And they're definitely not killing anyone on my watch. Marcus, you do not understand. A Viraketh warship carries perhaps 50 of my kind. Each one is larger than me, trained in combat from hatching and equipped with weapons that could level your entire facility. Your courage honors me, but it will only result in your death. Maybe, but I'm not just going to hand you over. Marcus began pacing, his mind working furiously. Tell me about your people's laws. You said something about clutch law. What exactly does that mean? Zarelith looked confused by the question. The clutch law governs all interactions between Viraketh. It establishes dominance hierarchies, territorial rights, mating privileges, and... The dragon paused. Why do you ask? Because every law has loopholes. Every system has exceptions. What happens if someone challenges the clutch law? Challenges it? No one challenges the clutch law. It has governed Viraketh society for millennia. But theoretically, what would happen? Zarelith was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with concepts that went against everything the dragon had been taught. I suppose, if someone were to invoke the trial of worthiness, what's that? An ancient custom, almost forgotten. If someone believes the clutch law has been applied unjustly, they can demand a trial. Not combat, a test of worth that proves the accused has value despite their apparent weakness. Marcus felt a spark of hope. What kind of test? It varies. Traditionally, the accused must demonstrate that their survival serves a purpose greater than their individual existence. But Marcus, no one has invoked the trial of worthiness in over 1,000 years. Most Viraketh would not even remember it exists, but it is still law. Technically, yes, but Marcus was already moving, gathering his equipment. Then that's our angle. When they arrive, I challenge their judgment on your behalf. Zarelith reared back in alarm. You cannot. You are not Viraketh. The trial laws do not apply to other species. Are you sure about that? If it's an ancient law, it might predate the current species classifications. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? They could kill us both immediately instead of just killing me slowly. Marcus paused in his preparations. Zarelith, do you trust me? The dragon's expression softened. With my life, which is saying something since I may be about to lose it anyway. Then trust me on this. I've spent 3 years managing a crew of 12 different species, all with their own customs and laws and pride. The one thing I've learned is that every culture respects strength, but they define strength differently. For humans, strength is standing up for what's right even when the odds are impossible. The Viraketh ships arrived just after local sunset, their massive forms blotting out the stars as they settled onto the planet's surface near the mining facility. Marcus watched from the facility's observation deck as ramps extended, and figures emerged that made Zarelith look small by comparison. The delegation that approached the facility consisted of 5 Viraketh, each one magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Their scales ranged from deep emerald to midnight black, and their movements carried the fluid grace of apex predators. The one in the lead bore intricate scarification that marked them as high-ranking. Marcus met them at the facility's main entrance alone. He had considered bringing backup, but decided that showing up with weapons would only escalate the situation. Instead, he relied on the one thing that had never failed him: direct honesty. I am Marcus Chen, foreman of this facility. I assume you're here about Zarelith. The lead Viraketh's head tilted in surprise. Most species required formal introductions and careful protocol when dealing with them. Humans apparently preferred to cut straight to the point. You know of the Albino's presence? The voice was deeper than Zarelith's, carrying undertones that made Marcus's teeth ache. I know that Zarelith is under my protection, and I know that you abandoned an injured person to die alone in the dark. Where I come from, We have a word for people who do that. The other Viraketh hissed in outrage, but their leader held up a clawed hand for silence. You dare to judge Viraketh law? I dare to judge cruelty wherever I find it. And I invoke the trial of worthiness on Zarelith's behalf. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus could practically hear the gears turning in the aliens' minds as they processed what he had said. Finally, the leader spoke again, and this time there was something like respect in the voice. You know of the old ways? I know that even the oldest laws should serve justice, not just tradition. The trial of worthiness has not been invoked in 1,000 years. I know. Maybe it's time. The lead Viraketh studied Marcus for a long moment, those alien eyes taking in everything from his posture to his breathing patterns. You realize that if the trial fails, both you and the albino will face execution? And if it succeeds? Then perhaps the clutch law is not as absolute as we believed. The Viraketh's head turned toward the mining facility. Very well, human. Your courage is noteworthy. The trial will commence at dawn. Bring the albino to the surface. As the delegation withdrew to their ships, Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He had bought them time and a chance. Now he just had to figure out how to prove that Zarelith's survival served a greater purpose than the individual existence of one outcast dragon. No pressure at all. Dawn on Kepler 442b painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, as Marcus helped Zarelith emerge from the hidden chamber. The dragon's leg was strong enough now to support movement, though Zarelith still favored it slightly when walking. More concerning to Marcus was the way Zarelith seemed to shrink inward as they approached the surface, the confident being he had come to know replaced by something fearful and submissive. Remember what we talked about, Marcus said quietly as they made their way through the tunnels. You're not the weak outcast they told you that you were. You're intelligent, compassionate, and capable of growth that your people have forgotten how to achieve. Speaking such words is easier than believing them when facing those who cast you out, Zarelith replied, but there was gratitude in the dragon's voice for the encouragement. The trial ground had been established in the open area between the mining facility and the Viraketh ships. Marcus's entire crew had gathered to watch, keeping a respectful distance but clearly fascinated by the proceedings. He had explained the situation to his deputy Thek, who had immediately volunteered to stand witness for Marcus if needed. The 5 Viraketh from the previous evening had been joined by others, creating a semicircle of magnificent and intimidating beings. At their center stood the leader, who Marcus had learned was called Kavraxi the Flame-Scarred, a battle commander whose reputation extended across multiple star systems. The human Marcus Chen has invoked the trial of worthiness for the albino Zarelith, Kavraxi announced in a voice that carried easily across the assembled crowd. This trial operates under the old laws before the current clutch code was established. The accused must demonstrate that their continued existence serves a purpose greater than their individual survival. Marcus stepped forward. Before we begin, I want to establish the parameters. What exactly constitutes proof of worthiness under the old laws? Several of the Viraketh made sounds of surprise. Apparently, most beings facing trial didn't ask for clarification of the rules. Kavraxi's scarred head tilted in what might have been amusement. Traditional proof includes demonstration of unique knowledge, evidence of service to others that transcends self-interest, or ability to solve problems that strengthen the community rather than the individual. And who judges whether the proof is sufficient? I do as the ranking clutch leader present. Marcus nodded, his mind already working. Then let's begin with unique knowledge. Zarelith, tell them about human social structures. For the next hour, Zarelith spoke about the conversations they had shared over the past weeks. The dragon explained human concepts of democracy, cooperative child-rearing, care for the disabled and elderly, and the way human societies had evolved to value diversity rather than just strength. What started as a recitation gradually became something more passionate, as Zarelith began to articulate ideas that had clearly been developing in the dragon's mind. Humans achieve advancement not despite their care for the weak, but because of it, Zarelith explained. A human with poor vision is given artificial lenses to see clearly. A human born without the use of their legs is provided mechanical assistance to move freely. Rather than discarding these individuals, humans find ways to include their perspectives and abilities in the advancement of their species. And what does this accomplish that culling the weak does not? Kavraxi asked, genuine curiosity in the voice. It prevents the loss of valuable minds and perspectives. The human physicist Stephen Hawking was physically weak by any traditional measure, yet his intellectual contributions advanced human understanding of the universe by centuries. Had he been culled for weakness, all of humanity would have been diminished. Marcus felt a surge of pride as Zarelith continued to explain concepts that the dragon had clearly internalized and expanded upon. But he could also see that while some of the assembled Viriketh were listening with interest, others remained unmoved. "Interesting philosophy," Kavraxi said when Zarelith finished. "But philosophy alone does not constitute worthiness. You speak of human ways as though they are superior to Viraketh tradition. What proof do you offer of service to others?" This was the moment Marcus had been preparing for. "Zarelith has been providing invaluable assistance to our mining operation." "Show them, Zarelith." Over the previous days, Marcus had shared geological surveys and mineral analysis reports with Zarelith, whose ancient knowledge of planetary formation and mineral distribution far exceeded anything in the current databases. Now Zarelith pulled out detailed maps and calculations, explaining how the mining operation could be expanded into previously unknown deposits that Viraketh geological knowledge had identified. The veins of tritium on this world follow patterns established during the planet's formation 3 billion years ago, Zarelith explained, projecting holographic displays that showed the underground structure in stunning detail. Current mining operations are following the obvious surface deposits, but the primary reserves lie much deeper, accessible through thermal vents that most species would consider too dangerous to explore. Marcus watched as the assembled Viriketh leaned forward with obvious interest. Tritium was one of the most valuable substances in the galaxy, and the prospect of new deposits was clearly compelling. "How do you possess this knowledge?" one of the other Viriketh demanded. "My people once mined worlds like this across the galaxy, before we became too proud to engage in what we considered menial labor." Zarelith's voice carried a subtle challenge. "I remember the old songs that taught proper mineral detection. Songs that are now considered beneath the dignity of true Viriketh to learn." Marcus could see the impact of Zarelith's words on the assembled dragons. Here was knowledge that their species possessed but had discarded as unworthy, now proving its value in practical application. "And the third test?" Kavraxi asked. "Can you solve problems that strengthen the community?" Marcus stepped forward again. "Actually, I think Zarelith already has, but not in the way you might expect." He gestured to his crew who had been watching the proceedings with fascination. 3 weeks ago, my workers were afraid of sounds coming from the old tunnels. Productivity was down, morale was suffering, and I was facing the possibility of having to shut down sections of the operation. Zarelith's presence, once I helped my crew understand the situation, has actually brought them together. Marcus had spent considerable time over the past few days talking to his workers about the situation. While they had initially been nervous about having a Viriketh on the planet, learning about Zarelith's circumstances and Marcus's efforts to help had struck a chord with the diverse crew. "The Klavek workers are fascinated by Viriketh mineral detection techniques," Marcus continued. "The Zephyrians want to learn about ancient star navigation methods. The Gorvani are interested in Viriketh metallurgy. Instead of creating fear and division, Zarelith's presence has created opportunities for knowledge sharing and cooperation." Thek stepped forward, his massive blue form imposing even next to the Viriketh. "Foreman Chen speaks truth. The crew votes unanimously that the dragon friend should remain." A murmur ran through Marcus's workers as they voiced their agreement. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest as he realized that his multi-species crew had come together to support Zarelith, without any prompting from him. Kavraxi looked around at the various groups present, clearly processing everything that had been presented. "These are unexpected arguments. The trial laws require demonstration of worthiness, but they do not specify what form that worthiness must take, because the old laws were written when your people still understood that strength comes in many forms," Marcus said quietly. "Before you decided that physical perfection was the only measure that mattered, the silence that followed was pregnant with possibility." Marcus could see that several of the Viraketh were clearly reconsidering their assumptions, while others remained rigidly opposed to any change in their traditional thinking. Finally, Kavraxi spoke. "The trial is not yet complete. There remains one final test." Kavraxi's announcement of a final test sent a ripple of tension through the assembled crowd. Marcus felt his stomach clench as he realized that despite all their preparation, there was still an unknown element that could determine Zarelith's fate. The ancient laws speak of a test that transcends knowledge, service, and problem-solving, Kovraxy continued, his scarred features unreadable. The test of true worth, where the accused must choose between their own survival and the welfare of others. It is the ultimate measure of whether an individual serves a purpose greater than themselves. Marcus felt Zarelith tense beside him. What does that mean exactly? It means, said another Viraketh stepping forward with obvious malice, that we present the albino with a choice. Save yourself or save others. Most who face this test reveal their true selfish nature. The newcomer was smaller than Kovraxy, but carried himself with vicious confidence. The scarification on his hide was different, marking him as what Marcus guessed was a different rank or specialty. This is Zethrak the Purist, Kovraxy explained. He believes that modern Viraketh have become too lenient, that the old ways should be enforced more strictly, not less. Zethrak hissed his agreement. The albino represents everything wrong with current Viraketh thinking. Weakness disguised as compassion, sentiment masquerading as strength. This human has filled its head with soft philosophies that would make our entire species vulnerable. Marcus felt his temper flare. And what exactly do you propose as this final test? Simple, Zethrak replied, his eyes glittering with cruel satisfaction. We have detected unusual seismic activity in the deeper levels of this facility. The mining operations have destabilized several key support structures. A collapse is imminent that will trap approximately 30 workers in the lower tunnels. Marcus's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? We monitor seismic activity constantly. There's been no indication of... Your equipment monitors surface tremors, Zethrak interrupted. Our deep scanners detect fractures at levels your crude instruments cannot reach. The collapse will occur within the hour. Kovraxy studied the readings on a device that one of his subordinates handed him. The data appears accurate. A significant structural failure is indeed imminent. Then we evacuate immediately, Marcus said, already reaching for his communication device. No, Zethrak said firmly. That would invalidate the test. The choice must be made under pressure with lives at stake. The albino can use its knowledge of planetary geology to stabilize the support structures and prevent the collapse. But doing so will require it to place itself directly in the path of the falling debris. The probability of survival for one individual attempting such a rescue is approximately 12%. Marcus stared at the purist in horror. You're asking Zarelith to commit suicide to save my workers. I am providing an opportunity for the albino to prove that its existence serves others rather than itself. If it chooses to flee and save itself while others die, then its worthiness is revealed as false. And if Zarelith dies attempting the rescue, then it will have proven its worth, though the point will be academic. Marcus turned to Kovraxy. This isn't a test of worthiness. This is murder with extra steps. The battle commander's expression was troubled. The ancient laws are clear. The test of true worth requires the accused to choose between personal survival and the welfare of others. The choice must be meaningful, with genuine consequences. But the test was never meant to be a death sentence, Zarelith said quietly. The dragon had been listening to the exchange with growing understanding. The old songs speak of tests that revealed character, not executions disguised as trials. Zethrak snarled his disagreement. The old songs were written by weaklings who feared making hard choices. True strength requires the willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good. Marcus felt something click into place in his mind. You're absolutely right, he said, causing everyone present to stare at him in surprise. True strength does require the willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good. But you're wrong about who should be making that sacrifice. Before anyone could react, Marcus was already moving toward the facility's equipment bay. Zarelith, I need you to guide me through the geological stabilization process. But I'm the one going down there? Marcus, no, Zarelith protested, moving to follow him. You cannot. You lack the physical strength to manipulate the support structures. Your human frame cannot withstand the pressures involved. Then we work together, Marcus replied, grabbing an environmental suit and seismic mapping equipment. You guide me through the process remotely, and I handle the physical manipulation. Your knowledge, my hands. Kovraxy stepped forward. That is not how the test is designed to work. The test is designed to reveal character, Marcus shot back. To show whether someone will choose others over themselves. Well, I'm making that choice. Zarelith's life has value, my workers' lives have value, and I'm not going to let anyone die because of some twisted interpretation of ancient law. Zethrak hissed in frustration. The human cannot take the test for the albino. That defeats the entire purpose, and does it? Marcus asked, pausing in his preparations. The purpose is to determine whether Zarelith's existence serves something greater than individual survival. What better proof could there be than the fact that someone else is willing to risk their life to protect Zarelith's? A murmur ran through the assembled Viraketh as they processed this logic. Marcus could see that his argument was having an impact, but Zethrak was clearly not convinced. Sentiment, the purist spat. The human's attachment clouds its judgment. This proves nothing about the albino's worth. Actually, Zarelith said, moving to stand beside Marcus, it proves everything. The dragon's voice carried a new quality, something Marcus had never heard before. Confidence, authority, the bearing of someone who had finally found their place in the world. For weeks, Marcus has shown me what true strength looks like, Zarelith continued. Not the ability to dominate others, but the courage to stand up for what is right even when the odds are impossible. Not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to build something better. Zarelith turned to address the assembled Viraketh directly. You want to know if my existence serves a greater purpose? It does. I serve as proof that our people can change, that we can be better than our fears and traditions have made us. That strength can mean protecting the weak rather than culling them. The dragon's gaze swept across the group, stopping at each face. Marcus is willing to risk his life to save me because he believes that my life has value beyond my individual existence. He sees potential in me that my own clutch siblings refuse to acknowledge. And in seeing that potential, he has helped me discover it in myself. Zarelith stepped closer to the equipment bay. So yes, I will go into those tunnels. Not because I am required to, but because it is the right thing to do, and Marcus will go with me. Not because he must, but because that is what humans do. They stand together in the face of danger. Marcus felt a grin spreading across his face as he realized what Zarelith was proposing. Partnership, Zarelith agreed. The thing our species have never tried because we have been too proud to learn from each other. Kovraxi watched this exchange with growing fascination. You propose to face the test together? We propose to save lives together, Marcus corrected. Whether that satisfies your test or not is secondary to the fact that there are people in danger who need help. The battle commander was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing options and implications. Finally, he turned to address his own people. The ancient laws speak of tests that reveal character. I believe we have seen enough character revealed today to make a judgment. Despite Kovraxi's apparent willingness to end the test, Zethrak was not finished. The purist stepped forward with unmistakable determination, blocking the path to the mining facility. No, he declared firmly. The test will proceed as designed. If these two wish to attempt the rescue together, they may do so. But the outcome will determine not just the albino's fate, but the future of Viraketh interaction with humans. Kovraxi's scarred features darkened. You overstep your authority, Zethrak. I invoke the right of challenge, Zethrak replied. The decisions made here today will echo throughout Viraketh society for generations. If we allow sentiment to override the testing of worth, we open ourselves to weakness that could destroy our entire species. Marcus saw Kovraxi's posture shift, becoming more formal and constrained. Apparently the right of challenge was something that even battle commanders had to respect. The challenge is acknowledged, Kovraxi said reluctantly. The test will proceed. Marcus felt his communication device buzzing with urgent messages from the facility. The seismic activity was increasing, and his crew was reporting strange vibrations in the deeper levels. Whether Zethrak had caused the instability or simply detected it, the danger was becoming very real. How long do we have? Marcus asked, checking the readings on his equipment. Zarelith consulted the geological data they had been studying. Based on the fracture patterns, perhaps 40 minutes before catastrophic failure. The workers need to be evacuated or the supports need to be reinforced. Evacuation would take at least an hour through the normal exits, Marcus calculated quickly, and that's assuming no panic, perfect coordination, and no delays. Then reinforcement is our only option, Zarelith concluded. We need to reach the primary support junction and activate the emergency stabilization system while simultaneously reinforcing the weakest structural points. Marcus studied the facility schematics. That requires someone to be in 3 different locations simultaneously. Or 2 someone's working with perfect coordination, Zarelith corrected. I can handle the stabilization system with my knowledge of geological pressure points. You can manage the emergency protocols with your understanding of human engineering. Zethrak watched their planning with obvious satisfaction. You see, already they discover that their task is impossible. When they fail, the workers will die, and we will have proof that sentiment leads only to weakness and death. Marcus felt his jaw clench, but forced himself to remain focused on the problem. Getting angry at Zethrak wouldn't save anyone. What about the 3rd location? We need someone at the monitoring station to coordinate our efforts. I can handle that, came a voice from behind them. Thek stepped forward, his massive Gorvani frame imposing even next to the Viriketh. I understand both human engineering and mineral pressure dynamics. I can coordinate your efforts from the central monitoring station. This exceeds the parameters of the test, Zethrak protested. No, it doesn't, Marcus replied. You said the test was to prove that Zarelith's existence serves something greater than individual survival. What better proof than the fact that multiple species are willing to work together to achieve what none could accomplish alone? Kavraxi watched the exchange with growing interest. The human makes a valid point. The original tests were designed to evaluate contribution to community welfare. If the albino's presence has inspired this level of cooperation, that speaks to worthiness. Tricks and sophistry, Zethrak snarled. The test requires sacrifice and risk, not clever interpretations. Then you'll be pleased to know there's plenty of both, Marcus said grimly, checking his equipment one final time. The odds of success are still terrible, and all 3 of us are putting our lives on the line. As they prepared to enter the facility, Marcus found himself thinking about the strange turns his life had taken. 3 weeks ago, his biggest worry had been managing production quotas and keeping his diverse crew working together harmoniously. Now he was about to risk his life in an alien trial that could reshape interspecies relations for generations. The descent into the deeper levels of the facility took on an almost surreal quality. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, and the increasing vibrations made every step feel precarious. Marcus could hear the groaning of stressed metal and stone as the geological instability continued to worsen. Seismic readings are getting worse, Thek reported over the communication system. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it fast. Marcus and Zarelith reached the primary support junction to find a scene that confirmed their worst fears. Massive steel beams designed to hold back millions of tons of rock were showing stress fractures, and several smaller supports had already failed completely. The pattern is exactly as I predicted, Zarelith said, consulting the geological scanner. The fractures follow the ancient fault lines. If we can reinforce points Alpha, Gamma, and Delta while simultaneously activating the emergency stabilization system, we can redistribute the pressure and prevent total collapse. That's a lot of ifs, Marcus muttered, but he was already moving toward the emergency controls. Thek, are you reading the structural stress indicators? Confirmed. You have approximately 15 minutes before point Alpha reaches critical failure. Marcus began the complex process of activating the emergency stabilization system while Zarelith moved toward the first reinforcement point. The dragon's knowledge of geological pressure was proving invaluable, but the physical demands of the work were enormous even for someone of Zarelith's size. Marcus, Zarelith called out, strain evident in the dragon's voice. The support beam at point Alpha requires precise angular adjustment. I can provide the force, but I need your engineering knowledge to calculate the exact positioning. Marcus left the stabilization controls and moved to help Zarelith, his mind racing through stress calculations and load distribution formulas. Together, they managed to wrestle the massive beam into the optimal position, but the effort left both of them exhausted. 2 more points to go, Marcus panted, checking his chronometer, and about 10 minutes to do it in. The work became a desperate race against time and physics. At point Gamma, a cascade failure in the overhead supports nearly crushed them both before Zarelith's quick reflexes pulled Marcus to safety. At point Delta, Marcus had to squeeze through a gap too small for Zarelith to navigate, making the final adjustments alone while trusting the dragon's remote guidance. Stabilization system is active, Thek reported as Marcus completed the last adjustment. Pressure readings are... Wait, something's wrong. Marcus felt his heart sink as new alarms began blaring throughout the facility. What is it? The stabilization system is working, but it's created a resonance cascade in the upper levels. The surface supports are failing. Marcus looked at Zarelith in horror as the implications hit them. They had saved the workers in the deep tunnels, but their success was threatening the surface facilities where most of the crew was stationed. Can we reverse the process? Marcus asked desperately. Not without causing the original collapse, Zarelith replied. We have perhaps 3 minutes before the surface structures begin falling. Marcus stared at the controls, his mind frantically searching for solutions. They had come so far, saved so many lives, only to create a new disaster. Unless... There is one option, he said slowly. If someone stays here to manually regulate the stabilization system, they can prevent the resonance cascade. But they'd have to remain at the controls until the geological pressure stabilizes naturally. How long would that take? Zarelith asked, though the dragon's expression suggested the answer was already understood. Approximately 6 hours, and the radiation levels down here will be lethal within 2. They stared at each other in the dim emergency lighting, both understanding the implications. Someone would have to sacrifice their life to save everyone else. It was, Marcus realized with dark irony, exactly the kind of choice that Zethrak had wanted to force in the first place. In the moment of desperate decision, both Marcus and Zarelith reached for the stabilization controls simultaneously. Their hands met over the activation switches, and for a heartbeat, they stared at each other in the emergency lighting. I'm staying, Marcus said firmly. This is my facility, my responsibility. No, Zarelith replied with equal determination. You have a family on Earth, people who need you to return. I am already outcast from my people. My death serves a purpose while yours would be waste. That's exactly the kind of thinking that got you abandoned in the first place, Marcus argued. Your life has value, and I'm not going to let you throw it away because of some misguided sense of worthlessness. Above them, the facility's structural alarms were growing more urgent by the second. Thek's voice crackled over the communication system with increasing desperation. Whatever you're going to do, decide quickly. The surface resonance is approaching critical levels. Marcus felt his mind racing through possibilities, searching for alternatives that didn't exist. 6 hours of manual control, lethal radiation levels, and 2 people arguing over who got to die. It was absurd, tragic, and entirely preventable if only— Wait, Marcus said suddenly, an idea crystallizing. Thek, what's the power output of the Viraketh ships? Unknown. Why? Marcus turned to Zarelith urgently. Your people's ships. Do they have the kind of power generation that could maintain this stabilization system remotely? Zarelith's eyes widened with understanding. Yes, easily. But that would require them to interface with human technology, to actively participate in the rescue, rather than simply observe. Then let's ask them. Marcus activated his communication array, broadcasting on the frequency he knew the Viraketh were monitoring. Kovraxi, this is Marcus Chen. We need immediate assistance. The response came quickly. What is the nature of your emergency? Marcus explained the situation rapidly, outlining the resonance cascade, the need for extended power regulation, and the lethal radiation levels. When he finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Kovraxi's voice returned. You are asking us to actively participate in saving human and alien lives. I'm asking you to help save lives, period. Species shouldn't matter when people are dying. Another pause, then Zethrak's voice cut through the transmission. This is manipulation. The humans engineer a crisis and then demand our assistance, making our refusal seem cruel. We didn't engineer anything, Marcus shot back. Your own sensors detected the geological instability, and right now, we have about 90 seconds before people start dying. So make your choice. Marcus could hear heated discussion in the background. Multiple Viraketh voices arguing in their own language. The seconds ticked away with agonizing slowness as the facility's alarms grew more urgent. Then Kovraxi's voice returned, carrying a note of command that brooked no argument. Zethrak, prepare the primary power coupling for external interface. All units begin emergency power transfer to the human facility. You cannot be serious, Zethrak protested. I am completely serious. If the albino's worthiness is to be judged by the willingness of others to risk themselves for its benefit, then our own worthiness will be judged by our response to this crisis. Marcus felt a surge of relief as he saw Viraketh technology interfacing with the facility's systems. The power levels stabilized, the resonance cascade damped out, and the immediate crisis passed, but the test was far from over. Over the next 6 hours, Marcus and Zarelith worked together to monitor the geological stabilization, while Viraketh engineers provided technical support from their ships. What emerged from this forced cooperation was remarkable. The combination of Viraketh geological knowledge, human engineering practicality, and multi-species problem-solving created solutions that none of them could have achieved alone. The pressure readings are finally stabilizing, Thek reported, as the crisis entered its final phase. All personnel are safe and the facility is structurally sound. As they emerged from the depths of the facility, Marcus found the entire assembled group waiting for them. Viraketh humans and the various species of his crew all gathered together, watching anxiously for the outcome. Kovraxi stepped forward, his scarred features thoughtful. The test is complete. The question of worthiness has been answered. Zethrak hissed his disagreement. Nothing has been proven except that sentiment can manipulate others into foolish risks. Has it? Kovraxi asked mildly. Let us examine what actually occurred. The albino demonstrated unique knowledge that proved valuable to the community. The albino provided service that benefited others without regard for personal gain. The albino inspired others to work together across species lines to solve an impossible problem. The battle commander's gaze swept across the assembled crowd, and when faced with the ultimate choice between personal survival and the welfare of others, the albino did not hesitate to choose sacrifice. That others intervened to prevent that sacrifice speaks to the value they place on the albino's continued existence. Furthermore, Kovraxi continued, this crisis forced us to work together with other species in ways we have not attempted for millennia. The results exceeded what any of us could have accomplished individually. Marcus watched as several of the other Viraketh nodded their agreement. The events of the day had clearly had an impact that went beyond the simple question of Zarelith's worthiness. The ancient laws were designed to test whether an individual's existence serves a purpose greater than themselves, Kovraxi concluded. I believe that purpose has been demonstrated beyond any reasonable doubt. Zethrak remained defiant. You speak of cooperation with lesser species as though it were a virtue. This weakens us, makes us dependent on others, does it? Zarelith spoke up, the dragon's voice carrying new confidence. Or does it make us stronger by allowing us to achieve things we could never accomplish alone? The debate continued for another hour, but Marcus could see that the tide had turned. The majority of the Viraketh present had been influenced by what they had witnessed. The demonstration of interspecies cooperation, the successful resolution of a crisis that could have killed dozens, and the sheer practical value of working together had made an impression. Finally, Kovraxi called for a formal judgment. Under the ancient laws, I declare the albino Zarelith to have demonstrated worthiness beyond question. The charges are dismissed and full status within Viraketh society is restored. Marcus felt a tremendous weight lift from his shoulders as Zarelith's trial officially ended. But as he looked around at the assembled group, he realized that something larger had been accomplished. What happens now? He asked Kovraxi. The battle commander studied him thoughtfully. Now we learn. The cooperation demonstrated today suggests possibilities that my people have not considered for centuries. Perhaps it is time to explore those possibilities more fully. Zarelith moved to stand beside Marcus, the dragon's posture straight and proud. If I may make a suggestion, I would like to remain here as a liaison between our species. There is much that humans and Viraketh can teach each other. And I think, Marcus added with a grin, that we're just getting started. As the Viraketh ships departed that evening, leaving behind a small delegation including Zarelith and 2 others interested in learning more about interspecies cooperation, Marcus reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. 3 weeks ago, he had been a simple foreman managing a mining operation. Now he found himself at the center of what might become a new era of galactic cooperation. Zarelith settled comfortably in the newly expanded facility that would serve as the first Viraketh Human Cultural Exchange Center. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the most important discoveries aren't in the ground, Marcus replied. They're in the connections we make with each other. As Kepler 442b's twin moons rose over the mining facility, Marcus looked up at the stars and wondered what other impossible things might be waiting out there. just beyond the edge of understanding. Whatever they were, he was confident that humans and their new Viraketh allies would face them together. After all, that's what partners did.